Howdy, we are moving on to part 3 of chapter 5. So market commonality and resource similarity largely shape the firm's awareness, motivation, and ability. We're going to get into these. So awareness is the extent to which competitors recognize the degree of their mutual interdependence that results from both market commonality and resource similarity. This leads into motivation. So motivation concerns the firm's incentive to take action or to respond to a competitor's attack. And this relates to perceived gains and losses. You may be aware of what a competitor is doing, but it might be in a part of the market that you're not competing, you're not really overlapping. So despite your awareness, you're not motivated to take action. You also may see a situation where a company is attacking directly in a part of the market commonality that is relevant to you. You're more likely to respond, and you'll need to respond. You'll be motivated to do so. However, next we consider the ability. So ability relates to each firm's resources and the flexibility that these resources provide. Without available resources, the firm lacks the ability to attack a competitor or to respond to that competitor's actions. So again, when we're looking at market commonality, a firm is more likely to attack the rival with whom it has low market commonality than the one with whom it competes in multiple markets. The risk can simply be too great to attack a competitor that you overlap with too much. Given the strong competition under market commonality, it is likely that the attacked firm will respond to its competitor's action in an effort to protect its position in one or more markets. And the greater the resource imbalance between the acting firm and competitors or potential responders, the greater will be the delay in response by the firm with a resource disadvantage. Those that don't have as many resources simply have a harder time competing. When facing competitors with greater resources or more attractive market positions, firms should eventually respond, no matter how challenging the response may be. So competitive action may be a strategic or tactical action the firm takes to build or defend its competitive advantages or improve its market position. A competitive response may be either a strategic or tactical action the firm takes to counter the effects of a competitor's competitive action. It is important for companies to carefully analyze and understand the competitive rivalry present in the markets in which they compete. To look at this as an example of actions and reactions, we can look at the price increases in airline tickets. So when you look at the three legacy carriers, American, Delta, and United, you will see that they very often follow very similar price patterns. When one raises their price, the others raise their price. When one lowers a price, the others do so, because they're watching and they're competing with one another. There may be differences. For a few days, you'll see that Delta might be a little more expensive, and then ultimately they end up with perhaps a lower price because they are constantly trying to attract customers to their airline. So firms use both strategic and tactical actions when forming their competitive actions and competitive responses in the course of engaging in competitive rivalry. A strategic action or a strategic response is a market-based move that involves a significant commitment of organizational resources and is difficult to implement, also difficult to reverse. A number of years ago, actually a couple of decades ago, Boeing and Airbus did a joint project on market research, and they came to some different conclusions. Boeing at the time decided to come up with what we now know as the 787 Dreamliner, a very efficient plane. And their strategy was that, or their expectation was that the market would prefer planes that perhaps had a little bit smaller capacity, but could have more flexibility for direct long-haul flights. At the same time, Airbus came up with the A380. They decided that they wanted to focus on a hub and spoke model where there would be, you would take a direct, a flight from one major city to another and then take a flight on a smaller plane to your final destination. The A380 had a capacity for about 800 passengers. Difficult to just go from one city to another where you have a lot of people taking direct flights. but it was also very efficient for moving that number of people. These were different directions, and these were ultimately strategic actions that each of them took. As it turned out, Boeing guessed right, and the A3, or the Dreamliner, the 787, has been a very popular and a very successful aircraft. Boeing, on the other hand, despite the billions of dollars spent in the A380, they ultimately discontinued it. This was a very expensive thing that they did, and they're no longer making that plane. This is a strategic action where there was a significant commitment of organizational resources. It was difficult to get into. It took years. Also difficult and expensive to reverse an action like that. A tactical action, or a tactical response, is a market-based move that firms take to fine-tune a strategy. These actions and responses involve fewer resources and are relatively easy to implement and reverse. A marketing campaign would fit here, or price changes. For question number 3, I want you to choose a company, any company that is reasonably well known to at least most of the class, and identify a tactical action and a strategic action taken by that company.